located directly adjacent to the property address 167 Norfolk County Road 60 in the former geographic township of South Walsingham. The subject lands are vacant and are proposed to be added to the rural residential parcel to facilitate the construction of accessory building with appropriate setbacks. Surrounding land uses are agricultural in nature. The proposed final lot size remains under the 1 acre, typically supported by planning staff. And this application is consistent with provincial policy statement and conforms to the official plan policies regarding boundary adjustments in the agricultural designation. Planning staff support this application and recommend that it be approved, subject to the attached conditions.
Thank you very much. Any questions of the planner? Marcel? I have a motion by Marcel, seconded by Rudy, that the committee hereby approves the application to sever a parcel having a frontage of 4.7 meters, an irregular width, a depth of 66.98 meters, and an area of 0.25 acres, retaining a parcel with an area of 97.98 acres as a boundary adjustment. The lands are to be added to the existing parcel located immediately adjacent to the west, roll number ending in 10350, making its final lot size 0.82 acres. The application is consistent with the provincial policy statement and conforms to the intent of Norfolk County official plan regarding boundary adjustments, and no public input was received, therefore not considered as part of the application. Any further discussion? Those in favor? Motion's carried. And we have one more, and that is BN017 VJC Inc. Is there anyone here? Your name is? Anyone else for this one want to speak? Wish to speak? No. Well, if you decide you want to tell, go ahead, tell me. We will have the planner explain the report.
This is an application to sever a surplus farm dwelling with a proposed lot size of 2.15 acres. The proposed lot is located on First Concession Road outside of Port Rowan within the former geographic township of South Walsingham. The lands are zoned and designated agricultural. The provincial policy statement permits surplus farm dwelling severances provided the lands are the minimum size required to accommodate the use and services such as water and septic. The official plan policy permits the same thing, minimum lot size for the residential use with minimal agricultural land being removed. In this case, the subject application does not conform to the official plan and is not consistent with the provincial policy statement. The size is not the minimum that is required, and it does include an irrigation pond and a barn that was previously used for livestock. The barn size was approved by council, although staff did not support that application. This application is not consistent with the provincial policy statement and doesn't conform to the intent of the official plan regarding surplus farm dwelling severances. Staff don't support this application and recommend that it be approved. Used.
Was that a message? I'm sorry. Does anybody have questions of the planner? Dan?
Yes, I'm wondering, Mr. Chairman, was there any discussion with the applicant to shorten the lot?
Was that talked about?
Through the chair, yes, we did discuss it prior to the applications being submitted.
Marcel?
Did you elaborate on that? Did they say no, or?
Through the chair, they chose not to make it smaller.
Mr. Chairman, the way it is now, I wouldn't be able to accept this. I don't want the pond or that barn attached to that house. So just so that the applicants maybe can have a different opinion on what to do.
Okay. Now, before we go to the applicant, if I might, what was the zoning amendment about the barn?
Through the chair, so it was for the maximum size. So generally you're allowed 200 square meters for accessory buildings on surplus farm dwelling severed lots. In this case, it is over 400 square meters. So there's a special provision now on the proposed severed lands that are still part of the farm that permits that larger size.
So if we were to sever this, we wouldn't need another zoning amendment to take care of the barn?
No.
Okay, very good. Yes, sir.
And that's my question. If council had not passed that, I would think that I would accept to refuse this.
Right.
But since they approved that, I think it's
We might be
foregone.
getting the cart ahead of the horse just a little bit because we still have, I understand what you're saying about the barn, and I agree with you, but there's a bunch of land behind the barn that includes a pond that isn't normal for a residential unit. Yeah. Okay, sir. So I guess you've heard the question is, if you've been told that you should make it smaller and you don't want to?
As I will outline, it makes sense to have the property lines as I've applied for. Mr. Chairman, committee members, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak in favor of the application for consent. My name is Glenn Kuhn, and my wife Pam is here, and our family business is VJC Inc., the applicant. This is indeed a surplus residence to my farm operations. After our family business, VJC Inc., purchased the farm, which joins with our other farm directly to the north between the first and second concessions, my wife Pam and I, we decided we would not move to this property and we would remain in our current residence 3.5 kilometers from the farms. The provincial policy statement allows for surplus residence severance, which accommodates water and sewage services. We have carefully considered the property lines in our application, and I would like to highlight why this application makes sense. I hope you have had time to visit the property, because when you do, it immediately becomes clear that the proposed property lines are in fact the best. The water source for the farmhouse is the pond. The wellhead is located on the bank of the pond, halfway up its length to the north. The report does not mention that this pond has never been used for farm irrigation. I have confirmed that with my neighbor Sheldon Dedrick. It was only used as the water source. The obvious irrigation source for my farm is Dedrick Creek. It runs through my farms to the east of the property. Dedrick Creek runs exclusively through my properties between the first and second, except for about 100 or 200 meters where it runs through Mr. Dedrick's farm. The sewage system is located on the east side of the house, and the proposed property line includes the tile bed. The northeast corner has been chosen to give the lot symmetry for both inclusion of the water source and the sewage system. The northeast quadrant is a mounded scrub area. It contains a derelict concrete foundation of a previous large building of some sort. It is not prime agricultural land, it is scrub. Again, when you physically see the property, the proposed boundaries look normal and make sense with the current tree lines and the field that I crop. All of the neighbors and community members I have talked to are in favor of the severance. I farm corn and soybeans on this land, along with a business affiliate. Together we farm a small operation of 565 acres, of which 92 acres are owned by my wife and I. Currently, we are in the process of purchasing another farm. Thankfully, it doesn't have a house on it. I know the value of prime agricultural land. The northeast corner is mounded scrub and is not prime agriculture. This severance will not adversely affect the operation or the viability of my business in compliance with the county plan. In the middle of the property is a large shop storage barn, which required me to make another application to Norfolk County for a zoning amendment. For this amendment, these same proposed boundaries and my intentions for severance were presented to County Council on January 30th, 2018. Council approved the application. As a farmer and a businessman, I am very aware of the importance of land. Also, I am very aware of the importance of water. What this report does not mention is the 50 acres to the east was former cow pasture. This is the area that Dedrick Creek runs through. Dedrick Creek empties into Long Point Bay at Bayview Cemetery. This is a crucial water source to our community. I have nothing against cattle farmers. However, Dedrick Creek is not the best place for a herd of cattle. Pam and I worked with Long Point Region Conservation Authority and the agency Ellis Norfolk to turn that marginal 50 acres into a wonderful conservation project. You can view that project from the first concession. We constructed 8 wetlands and planted 14,000 trees with the help of Trees Ontario, with another 9,000 scheduled to be planted next month. These wetlands produce wildlife biodiversity, water filtration, carbon sequestration, and flood mitigation in our community. We worked with Bird Studies Canada to separate 15 of those acres for 2 separate species at risk, the bobolink and the eastern meadowlark. This initiative was very successful. It was estimated that over 24 bobolink inhabit our property in 2017, and 2 eastern meadowlark were spotted. We did similar wetland projects on our North Farm at Dedrick Creek in 2013. In 2014, I was chosen as the province's green leader by Forests Ontario. I understand Norfolk's ecosystem services, and I strive to do the right thing for our community in my business, in my farm business. This severance that is presented today will have no impact to my farm operations, and it is dwarfed by the commitment and the investment that I've poured into my community the past 30 years as a pharmacist and now a farmer and a conservationist. This is a property severance that is sensible to my farm business and operation and sensible to the taxpayers of my community and Norfolk County. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Who wants to say what? Dennis?
Mr. Chairman, I think I've just been convinced. And with that in mind, I will move approval.
I'll read that motion in a minute. Somebody else want to say anything? Dan?
Well,
Or you want me to read the motion first?
I'll do it after
I
the
can do
motion.
that. Sure. The motion is moved by Dennis, second by Larry, that we approve this application with a frontage of 70 meters, a width of 70 meters, a depth of 125 meters, an area of 2.15 acres, retain a parcel with an area of 145.08 acres. As a severance of a dwelling made surplus for farm amalgamation, the application is being reviewed concurrently with a zoning bylaw amendment for the retained lands to remove a single detached dwelling as permitted use in the agricultural zone. This application is consistent with the provincial policy statement and conforms to the intent of the Norfolk County official plan regarding surplus farm dwelling severances. No public input received, therefore not considered. Is the motion. Dan?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I have 2 questions. Question number 1 is to the applicant, and that is, what is the intention for this particular property? Is it to be sold? The second question is, if it is, of the planners, are they aware of other bylaws that the county has where that irrigation pond, whatever it is, but that body of water would be fenced similar to a swimming pool that we have, throughout the county? Those are the 2 questions.
Okay.
First of all, maybe from the applicant, what he intends to do with that property.
You plan on selling this property? Is that why the severance?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Sion?
Yes.
Thank you. Yes, our intention with the, for BJC Inc. is to sell that property.
Thank you.
Okay. One, two is the fencing.
Through the chair, we're not aware of any policies that would require it to be fenced.
Thank you.
Mr.
Yes.
Chairman, just further to that, if it becomes part of, I guess, what is a residential property, how is it different than a swimming pool in terms of a requirement to be fenced?
I'm not like them, I'm not aware of the bylaw. I know some irrigation ponds, and that's what we're going to call this for now,
Yeah.
are required to be fenced. That out in the country, if they're if they're too close to the road, they got to be fenced because they don't want people stopping on the road and going and swimming. And I know of a couple of situations like that. This I don't know about though, so, unless somebody else has more knowledge. I would say that it's strange to make a severance with an irrigation pond for residential use. I understand that the water supply comes from the pond, although we make other people dig wells. We're stretching here to include the barn, which is way too big for an accessory building. However, wisely, they have council have already done a zoning bylaw, so that's not an argument, the size of it anymore. Whether it stays with the property still is. And then this pond, I'm having trouble getting by a pond on a residential lot, period. That's my problem. Rudy?
I guess, Mr. Chairman, that was my initial concern when I read the report, that I've never seen an irrigation pond being requested for a residential lot, but according to the applicant, I guess that pond has never been used for irrigating crops, is my understanding.
However, how do you differentiate that from an irrigation pond? And I guess I don't want to get it too involved because I got to lead the thing. However, you're right. We've never ever granted a severance with a pond on the severance, and that goes back to all 17 years we've been here, 18 years we've been here, and the previous 15 years I was at the city of Nanticoke doing severances. Never have I seen it before, so there's first time for everything, though. I'll keep an open mind that way. Yes.
I mean, to me, it seems that, or logical, that the pond could have been used for the animals that were in that barn at one time. And to me, a pond is very clearly a, agricultural use in the countryside. It's not part of a natural feature that's connected to this lot or to the property lines. So I'm having a really hard time with the pond being included and the barn to some extent, but
Well, I guess, Dan.
Just another question through you, Mr. Chairman, to the planners. Can we require a condition that the pond will be fenced according to some code prior to the sale of this property? Can we do that?
Through the chair, we can make it a condition of the severance. I'm not sure if there is a bylaw or not that would set out specifications for it, but it can be to planning staff satisfaction or something along those lines. Or you can just set out right now how tall you want the fence or something like that, but I'm just not sure if there is a bylaw that we can refer to. But you can include the fence as a condition.
If that condition, Mr. Chairman, if that condition is included, I would support this.
Dennis?
Mr. Chairman, I will include that as a condition in the motion that I made. And would it be appropriate to ask the applicant whether in fact he has any objection to that particular requirement?
Sir? Now, if that's a requirement, it's also something new to me. So, but I think you got to say what kind of fence you want there, and I would suggest you just say it was strictly a 4-foot-high frost fence. And otherwise, you know, it's going to be a 2-foot fence, or an 8-foot fence, or a wood fence, or, see, most ponds are with 4-foot frost fences, that make it simple.
That would do it for me.
A frost fence might be a generic term, but, yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I guess just as a follow-up to that, could we ask the owner of the property to apprise staff when that fence is erected, please?
It'll have to be done before the severance is finalized. So he's got 12 months
Okay.
at the most. If it's not done, it won't get stamped and it won't be approved. Like all conditions. Okay, so I've read the motion that we approve it, the size, everything the way it is. We've added one condition, and that condition is that the pond be entirely fenced in with a minimum 4-foot-high frost fence. And I just quote marks over the frost because it could be a Stelco fence, the same thing, whatever. Right? But you get the gist from that, right? Now that is if we approve it. Is there any other discussion? Those in favor of the motion, which includes the fencing? Please. Those opposed? However, the motion is carried and it's approved. Thank you, everyone. Is there any other business? Perfect. I have to be at work by 6.